Hi, I'm Dr. Tim Clinton, president of the American Association of Christian Counselors. 1 Timothy chapter 3, verses 1 through 5 says that if one desires the office of a bishop, he desires a good thing. Paul goes on and talks about then the special qualifications for those who are going to serve in that calling. My dad was called as a young man into the ministry. He spent nearly 60 years as a pastor. I saw firsthand what it was like to serve in that calling as a son. I also served in the ministry myself, and I'm now working with pastors and Christian leaders on a personal level for a number of years. I've learned that anything or anyone who has that much potential for God, I know this, all hell will be against them. There are a couple of deep concerns I've also become aware of. First one is aloneness or loneliness. Most Christian leaders feel as if they have absolutely no one to talk to. That's a dangerous place to be. The second concern is the idea of just simply what it means to be successful in the ministry. I remember as a son, on Sunday evenings, we would leave our farmhouse that we rented and drive down the hills in central Pennsylvania to the church where my dad would preach on Sunday nights. And I remember as we would come down and meander our way out of the country roads down to Route 36, as we made that final approach, we would make a turn, sort of a left-handed turn, go across the railroad tracks and down the hill to a stop sign. And then we would look up the big highway, and the church would be up on the right. And as we'd make that turn, I remember every Sunday night, typically, we would look to see if anybody was coming to church on Sunday night. My dad served in 3 rural churches up in Pennsylvania. And it was tough. It's tough being faithful when you wonder if it really matters. I also, later on, remember going home from school and getting into my dad's study up in the hills. And one time I stepped into the study and I found an old Chuck Swindoll book. And I opened it up and realized my dad had been going through it. But he only highlighted one piece in that book. And I could tell it wasn't about the ministry per se, it was about him. And he just highlighted this: you're not a nobody. And I thought to myself, Dad, you have no idea, who you are and the amazing gift and calling that God's placed on your life. And you know what? He was faithful. He just every now and then would wrestle with what it meant to serve the Lord up in those hills of Pennsylvania as a sort of rural country pastor. But I know this: God raised up giants out of his faithfulness in the ministry. I'm also concerned because we now know that 1,500 pastors leave the ministry each month due to moral failure, spiritual burnout, or contention or fighting in their churches. 70% of pastors feel grossly underpaid. We know that 90% of pastors say that the ministry was completely different than they thought it would be before they entered the ministry. 90% of pastors report working between 55 and 75 hours a week. We also know that 4 out of 5 pastors feel that their families are negatively impacted by their ministry. That doesn't mean, by the way, that being called isn't a good thing. But let me say this: because of all this, that's why I'm honored and I'm delighted to introduce to you and endorse a ministry, this ministry, Care for Pastors. They stand in the gap for pastors and their families during life's most difficult moments. And by the way, those moments do come in the ministry. Care for Pastors offers a safe, confidential place of refuge for those whose feet are shod with the preparation of the gospel, called out ones. Let me say this: I salute Ron and Rodetta Cook, the amazing work they're doing at Care for Pastors. You know why? Because they love people who serve just like my dad.